There is a moment written in silence, a moment when the heavens themselves paused. Not because armies moved, not because thunder roared across the skies, but because of something far more unexpected. Something no one believed could happen without help, without power, without an army behind it. And yet it happened in the quietest way possible. Alone. Completely alone. There are stories in the world about warriors, prophets, and legends who changed the course of destiny. History remembers their victories, their courage, their sacrifices. But what people rarely understand is that the greatest victories were never won in front of crowds. They were won in the dark, when no one was watching, when the world assumed defeat had already happened, as the place where true chosen ones are revealed. Long before anyone recognized it, before people even understood what was unfolding, there was a battle taking place that few could see. It wasn't a battle of swords and shields. It was a battle of endurance, faith, and a spirit that refused to collapse. The world looked ordinary on the outside, but behind the scenes something extraordinary was being written into existence. Many believed the limits had already been set. They thought strength only existed when supported by numbers, by recognition, by applause. They believed that standing alone meant weakness, that isolation meant defeat. But the truth was far different. The greatest power ever placed inside a human soul reveals itself when everything else disappears. And that was exactly the moment that changed everything. And that was exactly the moment that changed everything. When the pressure came, it didn't arrive gently. It came like a storm determined to break every piece of resolve that remained. Doubt whispered constantly. Circumstances tightened like chains, and the path forward seemed impossible. Every sign suggested surrender. Every voice said the same thing. This cannot be done alone. But something inside refused to accept that ending. Because when someone is chosen, there is a force planted deep within them that does not operate by ordinary rules. It doesn't measure possibility by logic. It doesn't calculate survival based on numbers. It moves with a different authority, one that the world often misunderstands until the outcome becomes undeniable. What happened next stunned more than just the people watching from the outside. Heaven itself took notice. Not because perfection was displayed, not because there was flawless execution or effortless victory. In fact, it was the opposite. The struggle was intense. Every step forward required strength that seemed impossible to gather. Somehow the movement never stopped. Even when exhaustion arrived, even when the weight of everything threatened to crush the spirit completely, the fire inside refused to go out. And that fire was not ordinary. Because most people crumble when isolation appears. They search for someone to carry the burden with them. They wait for reinforcements, delay action until support arrives. But a chosen one moves differently. When the world steps away, that is when the real mission begins. That is when destiny speaks the loudest. What unfolded in that unseen moment was not just perseverance. It was something far deeper. It was proof that divine strength does not require crowds. It does not require recognition. It only requires a heart that refuses to abandon the purpose planted inside it. And that is exactly why the result shook the spiritual realm. Because the expectation was failure. The expectation was surrender. The expectation was that the weight would become too heavy, the loneliness too loud, the opposition too overwhelming. Every calculation predicted the same ending. But the ending never arrived. Instead, something astonishing happened. Step by step, breath by breath, the impossible began to collapse. Obstacles that seemed immovable started breaking apart. Forces that once appeared unbeatable began to retreat. And all of it happened without an army, without applause, without anyone stepping in to rescue the situation. Just one spirit standing firm. Just one heart refusing to bow. The moment became so powerful that even the watchers in heaven recognized what was unfolding. Not because they doubted the power placed inside chosen souls, but because witnessing it activate in complete isolation revealed a level of strength rarely displayed on Earth. It was the kind of moment that forces the universe itself to pause and observe, because when someone rises alone against forces designed to destroy them and still refuses to fall, something sacred is revealed. Something undeniable. Something that reminds the entire world that divine purpose does not depend on numbers, approval, or timing. It depends on courage. And courage like that changes everything. The world may never fully understand the weight of battles fought in silence. Many will only see the outcome and assume it happened easily. They will see the strength and assume help must have been present. But the truth will always remain hidden inside that quiet moment when the decision was made not to quit. That was the moment that mattered. That was the moment the impossible began breaking. That was the moment heaven leaned closer. Because when a chosen one refuses to surrender even, power released in that decision echoes far beyond what human eyes can see. Echoes far beyond what human eyes can see. And sometimes that courage becomes so unexpected, so relentless, that even the heavens themselves pause in amazement at what has just been done. At what has just been done. Chiali, there was a moment written in silence, a moment that never appeared on the surface of the world, yet carried a weight that reached far beyond what human eyes could see. It did not happen in a crowded room or on a battlefield filled with cheering voices. It happened in a quiet space where only determination and unseen resistance existed. The kind of moment most people overlook because nothing dramatic seems to be happening on the outside. Yet inside that moment, something extraordinary was unfolding. Something extraordinary was unfolding. The world often believes greatness begins with recognition. People assume that powerful moments are always witnessed, celebrated, or announced loudly. But the truth is far more mysterious. The greatest turning points in a chosen life rarely arrive with applause. They arrive in isolation, in the shadows of uncertainty, where doubt speaks the loudest and strength must be discovered from within rather than borrowed from others. That silent moment began like any other ordinary day. Nothing appeared different at first glance. The sky did not split open, the ground did not shake, and no sudden announcement echoed through the world. Yet beneath the surface, pressure was building. Circumstances were aligning in ways that would test every ounce of resolve placed inside a chosen spirit. The weight of it came slowly at first, like a whisper of resistance pushing against every step forward. Small obstacles appeared, followed by larger ones, until it seemed as if every direction had been surrounded by walls that refused to move. Many people experience this stage and assume it is the end of their journey. They interpret resistance as a sign that they are not meant to continue. But that assumption is exactly where most stories end, before they ever truly begin. Because when someone carries a purpose planted by heaven itself, resistance does not signal defeat. Resistance signals activation. It means something important is being approached, something powerful enough to attract opposition from every direction. And the closer that moment becomes, the heavier the pressure begins to feel. In that silence, a choice appeared. It was not a dramatic decision spoken out loud. No crowd gathered to hear it. No witnesses recorded the moment. It was simply a quiet determination forming deep within the soul. The kind of decision that changes everything without making a sound. Walking away would have been easier. Accepting defeat would have brought immediate relief. Most people would have chosen that path without hesitation because surrender often feels safer than stepping deeper into uncertainty. The world trains people to protect themselves from struggle, to retreat when things become too heavy to carry. Yet something inside refused to follow that familiar path. There was a fire burning that could not be explained through logic or comfort. It was not fueled by approval or recognition. It existed long before anyone noticed and continued to grow even when the world offered nothing in return. That fire carried a quiet message that refused to disappear, reminding the spirit that purpose does not abandon those who remain faithful to it. Step by step, movement continued despite the growing pressure. Each action required courage that seemed impossible to gather. Each decision demanded strength that did not appear to exist moments before it was needed. And yet somehow, the strength arrived exactly when it was required, like an unseen force providing just enough power to keep moving forward. The silence, surrounding that struggle made it even heavier. There were no encouraging voices confirming that the path was correct. There were no signs promising that success would eventually appear. Everything depended on faith strong enough to continue without visible evidence. This is the place where chosen ones are separated from everyone else, because ordinary strength fades when support disappears. Ordinary courage weakens when the outcome becomes uncertain. But the spirit of someone chosen carries a different kind of endurance. One that grows stronger when circumstances attempt to crush it. The more pressure increased, the clearer something became. The walls surrounding the path were not designed to destroy the journey. They were designed to reveal the power hidden inside it. Every obstacle became a mirror reflecting a deeper level of resilience waiting to be discovered. And with each step forward, something remarkable began to happen. Fear slowly lost its grip. Doubt started to fade into the background. The very challenges that once appeared impossible started revealing small cracks, tiny openings that suggested they were not as permanent as they first seemed. Movement created change. Determination created momentum. What began as a quiet decision in isolation started shifting the atmosphere around it. Forces that once felt overwhelming began losing their authority. The obstacles that once appeared unbreakable started weakening under the pressure of relentless perseverance. It was happening slowly, almost invisibly, yet the transformation was undeniable. Every moment spent refusing to surrender strengthened the spirit even further. Every act of courage expanded the limits that once seemed fixed. The silence that once felt heavy now became a sacred space where something powerful was being built. Something that could not have developed in comfort or ease, because true strength is never created through convenience. It is forged in moments where the outcome remains hidden and the journey must continue anyway. It grows through resistance, through uncertainty, through battles fought far away from recognition or applause. And within that silent moment, something began awakening that would soon shake far more than the circumstances surrounding it. Most people believe strength is something that appears when the world is watching. They imagine courage standing under bright lights, surrounded by support, encouraged by voices that say, "Keep going." They think power grows louder when applause fills the air. But the truth about real strength is far different. Real strength grows in silence, in moments when no one is there to encourage the fight, when the path forward feels empty, and every step must be taken without reassurance. The journey into that silence is never comfortable. It often begins when everything familiar starts fading away. People who once stood nearby slowly disappear. Support that once felt reliable becomes distant. Situations that once seemed stable begin shifting in ways that create confusion and uncertainty. For many, this moment feels like abandonment, as if the world itself has decided to turn away. Yet hidden inside that isolation is something far more powerful than companionship. Because when someone is chosen for a purpose greater than ordinary life, there comes a moment when external voices must fade away, not as punishment but as preparation. The noise of the world often distracts from the deeper voice placed inside the soul. As long as that noise remains loud, the deeper guidance cannot fully be heard. Silence clears that space, and in that space something begins to awaken. At first it feels uncomfortable. The absence of approval creates doubt. Questions start rising that never appeared before. Thoughts whisper that maybe the path was misunderstood, maybe the direction was wrong from the beginning. These thoughts do not arrive randomly. They are part of the pressure designed to test the depth of belief. Because belief is easy when everything feels supported. Belief becomes powerful when it survives isolation. As the silence continues, the struggle becomes more personal. Every step forward must now come from an inner source rather than outside encouragement. The mind begins searching for proof that the journey still matters. But proof does not always appear when it is demanded. And, instead, something deeper begins forming beneath the surface. It is a quiet confidence that grows slowly, almost unnoticed at first. This confidence does not depend on circumstances. It does not require constant success or visible progress. It simply exists as a steady presence reminding the spirit that purpose does not vanish simply because the path becomes difficult. The world often misunderstands this stage. From the outside, it may appear as if nothing is happening. People might assume the journey has stalled or that progress has disappeared completely. They see silence and assume weakness. They see isolation and assume defeat. But beneath that quiet surface, transformation is taking place. Pressure is refining the spirit. Resistance is strengthening endurance. Every moment spent refusing to quit is building a foundation far stronger than anything created through comfort or ease. This is the hidden training ground of chosen ones. The place where ordinary determination becomes extraordinary resilience. Extraordinary resilience. Every challenge that appears during this time carries a purpose. Some obstacles reveal hidden fears that must be faced. Others expose doubts that must be overcome. Each moment of struggle becomes an opportunity to develop a deeper level of trust in the purpose guiding the journey. And, slowly, almost invisibly, something remarkable begins to happen. The same challenges that once created fear start losing their power. Situations that once felt overwhelming begin appearing smaller than they did before. The spirit that once questioned its own strength begins realizing that it has already survived far more than it ever believed possible. Confidence begins replacing hesitation. Not the loud confidence that demands attention, but a quiet certainty that no longer requires constant validation. This certainty changes everything, because once the spirit realizes it can stand firm even when everything else disappears, fear loses its greatest weapon. Isolation no longer feels like abandonment. Silence no longer feels like defeat. Instead, both become tools that strengthen focus and sharpen purpose. In that environment, clarity begins to grow. The distractions that once pulled attention in every direction slowly fade away. What remains is a deeper understanding of why the journey began in the first place. The mission becomes clearer, the direction stronger, and the determination more stable than ever before. The silence that once felt heavy now becomes sacred. It becomes the space where preparation is completed. Because the world often celebrates the visible victories of chosen ones, without understanding the invisible battles that came before them. They see the moment of triumph, but never witness the countless hours of solitude, where courage had to be chosen again and again without any guarantee of success. Those quiet moments shape everything. They forge a level of strength that cannot be easily broken. They create endurance that continues moving forward even when circumstances attempt to force surrender. They build a spirit capable of carrying responsibilities far greater than what ordinary lives demand. And as that strength continues growing, something deeper begins rising within the soul, a realization that the silence was never meant to destroy the journey. It was meant to prepare the spirit for the weight of what comes next. Pressure has a strange way of revealing what truly lives inside a person. When life moves smoothly, when the path is clear and the weight feels light, almost anyone can continue walking forward. Confidence comes easily when nothing stands in the way. Courage feels natural when the outcome seems certain. But real character does not appear during comfortable moments. It appears when resistance grows so strong that stopping begins to look like the only logical option. There comes a point in every chosen journey where the pressure stops being gentle. It stops whispering and begins pushing with real force. Situations tighten like a closing circle. Every direction that once felt open suddenly seems blocked. Doors that once appeared welcoming become silent and unmoving. Opportunities fade, support weakens, and the road that once seemed clear becomes filled with obstacles that feel almost deliberate. Most people reach this stage and assume they have gone too far. They begin questioning every decision that brought them there. The mind replays the past, searching for mistakes that might explain the sudden weight of resistance. Doubt becomes louder than faith, and the temptation to retreat becomes stronger than the desire to continue. This is the moment where many journeys quietly end. This is the moment where many journeys quietly end. Not because the purpose was false, but because the pressure became too heavy for belief to carry. Yet chosen spirits experience this moment differently. Even when confusion rises and exhaustion begins to appear, something deeper refuses to collapse. There is a quiet awareness that the resistance itself might be part of the path, rather than a signal to abandon it. This awareness does not erase the struggle. The pressure remains real. Every step forward still demands effort that stretches the limits of endurance. But the presence of that deeper understanding changes how the spirit responds to the challenge. Instead of retreating, attention begins shifting inward. Because somewhere beneath the noise of fear and uncertainty lies a strength that was placed there long before the journey ever began. It is not a strength that depends on perfect conditions or constant success. It exists independently, waiting for the exact moment when it becomes necessary, and pressure has a way of unlocking it. As the struggle continues, the spirit begins discovering abilities that never seemed possible before. Patience grows deeper than it once was. Courage becomes steadier even when fear attempts to interrupt. The mind begins learning how to move forward without demanding constant reassurance. This transformation happens slowly, almost invisibly. From the outside, the situation may still appear difficult. The obstacles may still stand in the way, unchanged and unmoved. Yet something inside the chosen spirit is beginning to shift. The same challenges that once felt overwhelming now feel like tests that can be endured, rather than barriers that cannot be crossed. Every difficult moment becomes another layer of strength. Every difficult moment becomes another layer of strength. Every refusal to quit becomes another piece of resilience. And with each passing day, the pressure that once threatened to destroy the journey begins shaping it instead. The mind starts recognizing patterns that were invisible before. It begins understanding that resistance often increases when something meaningful is approaching. The closer the spirit moves toward its purpose, the more determined opposition becomes to stop that progress. What once felt personal now begins to look strategic. The obstacles are no longer random misfortunes. They become signs that the path ahead being walked carries significance. If the journey held no importance, there would be no reason for resistance to grow this strong. This realization changes the energy of the struggle. Instead of viewing every challenge as proof of failure, the spirit begins seeing them as confirmation that something powerful is unfolding. The pressure that once created fear now fuels determination. The weight that once felt unbearable becomes a reminder that the journey carries purpose greater than comfort. And slowly, confidence begins to rebuild itself. Not the fragile confidence that depends on constant victory, but a deeper certainty rooted in endurance. A confidence that understands strength is not proven by avoiding struggle, but by surviving it. The chosen spirit begins moving differently. Fear still appears from time to time, but it no longer controls the direction of the journey. Doubt may whisper, but it cannot silence the voice of purpose growing stronger within. Each step forward becomes steadier, guided by the knowledge that pressure cannot last forever. Because pressure has a limit, resistance eventually weakens when it realizes the spirit it is fighting refuses to surrender. Obstacles begin losing their intimidation when they no longer succeed in stopping movement. Even the heaviest challenges start showing signs of fatigue when confronted with determination that refuses to break. The journey continues through moments that once seemed impossible to survive. Strength expands beyond what once felt like its boundaries, and within that growing resilience, something extraordinary begins forming, a level of power that only emerges after enduring pressure that most people would never choose to face. There comes a stage in the journey where something inside begins to change so deeply that even the challenges around it start to react differently. At first, the resistance felt overwhelming. Every step forward required strength that seemed impossible to gather. The path looked narrow, uncertain, and filled with moments that tested the limits of endurance. But slowly, almost without notice, the spirit that once struggled simply to survive the pressure begins to adapt to it. Pressure that once felt unbearable starts feeling familiar. This transformation does not happen because the challenges suddenly disappear. The obstacles may still stand in place. Situations may still demand patience and resilience. Yet the difference now lies within the spirit itself. What once felt like a storm threatening to destroy everything now feels like a wind that can be faced without fear. Because endurance has begun reshaping the soul. When someone passes through long seasons of resistance without surrendering, a new level of awareness begins forming. The spirit starts recognizing how temporary many struggles truly are. Moments that once seemed endless begin revealing their limits. Even the strongest storms eventually weaken when they encounter a heart that refuses to collapse. This realization creates a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of reacting to every challenge with frustration or panic, the chosen spirit begins observing the situation with calm focus. Obstacles are no longer viewed as enemies that must be feared. They become signals, indicators pointing toward areas where growth is still taking place. Every difficult moment now carries information. Every delay reveals patience that must deepen. Every unexpected barrier exposes strength that has not yet fully awakened. The journey stops feeling like a battle against circumstances and begins feeling like a process of discovery. The chosen spirit starts uncovering abilities that were always present but never needed to appear until now. Clarity begins replacing confusion. In earlier stages, every setback felt personal. Every delay seemed like a rejection of the path itself. But as resilience grows, understanding expands as well. The mind begins realizing that purpose often requires preparation that cannot happen quickly. Some strengths can only develop through repeated trials, through situations that stretch endurance beyond what once felt possible. This preparation is rarely comfortable. It requires facing moments where progress seems invisible. It requires continuing forward even when results cannot yet be seen. But those who endure long enough begin noticing something remarkable happening beneath the surface. Their capacity expands. Situations that once caused emotional exhaustion now feel manageable. Challenges that once demanded enormous effort now require far less energy to handle. The spirit becomes steadier, less shaken by sudden changes or unexpected difficulties. This steadiness creates something even more powerful: control. Not control over every situation, but control over the response to those situations. The chosen spirit learns that while circumstances may not always be predictable, the decision to remain calm and determined always remains available. And that decision changes everything, because when resistance realizes that fear no longer controls the spirit it is confronting, its influence begins weakening. The same obstacles that once appeared intimidating start losing their authority. They no longer create the same emotional reaction. They no longer succeed in slowing down the movement forward. Strength becomes visible in a new way. It appears in the ability to stay focused when distractions attempt to pull attention away. It shows in the patience to continue working quietly, even when recognition has not yet arrived. It reveals itself in the courage to stand firm while others begin questioning the path. And with each passing moment, the transformation deepens. The chosen spirit begins trusting its own endurance. There is no longer a constant need to search for confirmation from the outside world. The knowledge of survival becomes its own evidence. Every challenge that was faced and overcome becomes another reminder that the journey has always been guided by something greater than circumstance. This trust creates a powerful sense of stability. The spirit no longer rushes through every moment trying to force quick results. Instead, it moves with steady intention, understanding that timing often carries its own wisdom. Certain breakthroughs only arrive after the necessary strength has been built to carry them, and that strength continues growing. The heart becomes braver with each new challenge. The mind becomes clearer with every obstacle that is faced without retreat. The spirit becomes stronger with every moment it chooses persistence instead of surrender. Something remarkable begins forming inside this quiet endurance, a presence that can walk through storms without losing direction, a resilience that continues rising even when the path becomes difficult, a level of determination that refuses to allow circumstances to decide the future. And within that growing strength, the chosen spirit begins realizing that the very struggles once feared were shaping a power that could not have been developed any other way. There comes a moment in every chosen journey when the spirit finally realizes how far it has traveled through battles that few people ever saw. For struggles that once felt endless now appear like distant storms that shape the strength standing in the present moment. Looking back, it becomes clear that every challenge carried a purpose far deeper than what could be understood at the time. When the journey first began, the path looked uncertain and fragile. Doubt whispered constantly, trying to convince the mind that the obstacles were too large to overcome. There were days when exhaustion pressed heavily on the spirit, moments when continuing forward felt like carrying a weight that never seemed to grow lighter. The silence surrounding those battles made the struggle even more intense, because there were no voices confirming that the effort would eventually matter. Yet something inside refused to disappear. Even during the hardest moments, there was always a quiet presence reminding the spirit that purpose does not fade simply because the road becomes difficult. That inner voice remained steady, guiding each step even when the destination could not be clearly seen. It encouraged patience when progress felt slow, and it whispered courage when fear attempted to take control. Over time, those small moments of perseverance began adding up. Each challenge faced without surrender strengthened the foundation beneath the journey. Every time doubt appeared and was pushed aside, confidence grew a little stronger. The spirit began learning lessons that could never be taught through comfort alone. It discovered how powerful determination becomes when it is tested again and again. With every obstacle overcome, endurance expanded beyond its previous limits. What once seemed impossible gradually became achievable. The same difficulties that once created fear started appearing smaller than before. The chosen spirit began realizing that strength is not something given only to a few special people. Strength is something built through persistence, through the willingness to continue even when circumstances suggest stopping. This realization carries enormous power, because once the spirit understands that it has already survived moments that once felt unbearable, a new level of confidence begins to rise. The future no longer feels as intimidating as it once did. Uncertainty loses its ability to control the direction of the journey. Even challenges that appear large no longer feel capable of destroying the progress that has already been made. The chosen spirit begins moving with a deeper sense of stability. There is no longer a constant need for approval from others. The battles fought in silence have already proven what the spirit is capable of enduring. Recognition from the outside world becomes less important, because the true victory was never about applause or validation. The real victory was the decision to keep moving forward when quitting would have been easier. That quiet victory changes everything. It creates a level of inner authority that cannot be taken away by circumstances. When someone knows how much pressure they have already survived, they begin approaching new challenges with a calm strength that others can feel even without words being spoken, and that presence becomes powerful. People may not understand the exact battles that shaped it, but they can sense the resilience behind it. They notice the steadiness, the patience, the confidence that does not need to prove itself loudly.
That quiet strength begins influencing the environment around it.
Situations that once seemed chaotic begin settling in its presence. Opportunities start appearing in places that once felt completely closed. The path that once looked uncertain begins revealing new directions that were impossible to see during earlier stages of the journey. It becomes clear that endurance was not only building strength, it was preparing the spirit for something greater. Every lesson learned through struggle becomes a tool for navigating the future. Patience allows wiser decisions to be made. Courage opens doors that fear once kept closed. Faith continues guiding the journey even when new uncertainties appear along. The path. The chosen spirit begins recognizing that the difficulties of the past were not punishments or mistakes. They were training. They were shaping a level of resilience that would eventually be needed for the responsibilities ahead. Without those seasons of testing, the spirit would not have developed the stability required to carry the purpose placed inside it. And that understanding brings a deep sense of clarity. The path no longer feels random or confusing. Even the painful moments begin making sense when viewed through the lens of growth and preparation. Each challenge was a step toward becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable of fulfilling the mission that had always existed beneath the surface. The chosen spirit now moves forward with a calm determination that comes from experience. Fear may still appear from time to time, but it no longer holds the same power it once had. Doubt may whisper occasionally, but it cannot erase the evidence of everything that has already been overcome, because the journey itself has already proven something important. It is shown that perseverance can outlast pressure. It is revealed that courage grows stronger each time it is tested. It has demonstrated that a spirit committed to its purpose can continue rising even after facing storms that once seemed impossible to survive.